president of the Canadian Produce Marketing Association from Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. I have the opportunity to quickly introduce the moderator, but before I get started, I just want to give a little background of what the Global Coalition is. Global Coalition is a group of allied associations from around the world that was formed just after the pandemic to begin looking at the challenges we've all faced within our supply chains. And since the forming of this coalition, we have published a range of briefing notes. We've run sessions like this in Berlin, here at Fruit Attractions, and we've basically been engaged with our global supply chain partners to try and provide solutions and to provide some answers, hopefully, to the challenges you're facing, but also to connect the dots so that we can move the entire global fruit and vegetable industry forward. The panel today, very excited with the individuals we've been able to pull together, and without delaying it any longer, I'd like to introduce our moderator from Food Care Plus, Steve Alerts. Steve is a global leader driving change in our supply chains. He works with partners all around the world as part of the IFPA volunteer leadership group, as well as working closely with other associations like CPMA and the coalition members to meet our objectives to drive change within our supply chain. So with that, I hand it over to Steve, and best of luck.
Thanks, Ron. Thanks, Ron. That's a very kind introduction, by the way. But with that, I'm not going to talk about me. Oh, you need to, oh, is it like that? Oh, because you don't hear it. Okay, I get it. Sorry, just technically. It sounds weird if you speak and you think, you know, nobody is hearing you, but it's because of the headsets. Okay, very good. So we're not going to talk about me and what I do, obviously. So it's far more interesting to talk about what's going on in our supply chain world. Well, in the supply chain world, or the fresh produce world in particular. And we have a fine panel here of different stakeholders that are going to help us to inspire you with some of the topics that we want to touch today and what we believe we can do in order to optimize the supply chain, come into a situation where we not only dream but also realize the supply chain of the future. And I'm just going to ask our panelists to introduce themselves. So on my left hand, Gaurav, the floor is yours.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Gaurav from India. My company is Intercont. It's a second generation logistics cold chain company. And for us at Intercont, supply chain is about, you know, moving bananas before they get black, grapes before they go sour, and onions before they make us cry.
That's a great thing. Just maybe for a little bit of context, so you're based out of Mumbai, right? But you operate all over India, and let's just to give an idea to the audience, what geographical scope do you cover right now with your operations?
So yes, we are headquartered out of Mumbai. We are predominantly in the fruits and vegetable space, and with India becoming focus in the global scene right now, and with the the globalization moving towards regionalization, China +1, India has found its place with a lot of short sea opportunities, whether it's the UAE, GCC, Southeast Asia, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh. These are all companies that are predominantly dependent on us. And now we're also seeing ourselves moving, long sea, which is Europe, Med, USA as well.
Yeah, with all the challenges. We'll get back to that later, obviously. I mean, then in this case...
That's why we exist.
Yeah, that's why we exist. So, Jeff, who are you?
Thanks, Steve. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Jeff Fowler. I work for a large Canadian retailer in Canada. Well, I said Canadian retailer already, Sobeys. I'm the National Sourcing Director for Produce, so co-seeing over managing many of the categories with my team of managers, buying produce globally for our stores. Our store network is coast to coast in Canada, from British Columbia on the Pacific all the way over to Newfoundland and the Atlantic, just over 1,500 store sites. Very happy to be here with everyone today.
Great, thanks. So you're actually, let's say, more on the receiving end here.
Correct.
And on the last mile, well,
Yep.
the last the last move to the consumer.
Yeah, our team's responsible for setting up the programs with our grower partners, all fresh fruits and vegetables, and working on those programs for the execution strategy for our end customer in the retail supermarket.
All right, great, great. So we have a connector, we have a receiver. Dion?
My name is Dion Joubert. I work for the CGA on market access in Europe and now America, of course. And I'm a proud member of the Southern Hemisphere Fruit Alliance and the head of the part on international logistics.
And Javier?
Well, my name is Javier Lopez. I work for the Port Authority of Algeciras Bay. We are the fourth largest port in Europe after Rotterdam and we're Hamburg. So we are strategically located in the Strait of Gibraltar. So we get a lot of cargo, fresh cargo coming from Africa, Morocco especially, and also from South America and South Africa and South America. So for us in a strategic business, we are working hard to get a more digitalization into the programs and see if we all together we can do a better and easier business for us.
Great, great, Javier. Thanks. So we actually have all representation here. We have the citrus shippers and exporters out of South Africa. We have the connectors, the ports, and the logistics service providers. And then we have the people at the receiving end that assess how well of a job that all of us have been doing. So thanks with that. Now, just a short recap of our previous conversation that we had in Berlin. Dion was also a part of that panel, and Ron, you moderated that panel. What I do remember very well from that conversation that we had is that we were seeking to find a good balance between accountability that each stakeholder represents in the total supply chain and relationships. So what do we find as normal, or what would we find as normal of a relationship that exists between people that work in their own speciality and need to collaborate and work together in order to get an optimal result, which for us I think always means for every association as well for the global coalition as CPMA and IFPA and all the other associations that exist, better product delivered at a customer, more recurrent sales, better experiences, more volume, and it drives everyone forward in the industry. I think we kind of all agree. And I want to touch first on the end of that discussion. So Dion, I'm going to go first to you. You remember that it was quite a, let's say, 15, 20 minutes of the conversation went pretty, let's say, direct on accountability. And we then said, like, should we balance between the concept of scoring people, being more public about it, or should we first work on massaging and making sure that everyone is on the same page, leading into the charter discussion? So if you could maybe share with us what your findings were during that conversation.
Look, I think, can everybody hear me? Well, it's very nice to he says he's on the receiving end, which I absolutely love. Working with Sobeys my entire life. So, look, I think the whole thing about it is that I always say housewives are probably the most finicky buyers of and the best quality inspectors in the world. So they don't buy something if it's in really great quality. And our goal as a combined unit is to deliver that that experience of freshness, taste, healthy to them, and a satisfied customer begins repeat sales. We're all extremely vulnerable to that. That said, we each have a role, and I think some of the challenges we have is that the world is a very interesting place with Mr. Trump as the president now. So we all have to find new solutions to problems we never knew existed, to be bluntly honest. And I think, but the great thing about this is that each of us have choices, just like the housewife, the grower, the shipping line, Sobeys, the ports, and all of these guys are great colleagues. But at the end of the day, we're also there to honestly and clearly mark the homework that we all do our job efficiently. If we do, we have success. If we don't, it falls down. So for me, it's the responsibility of each guy doing his job and accept that everybody must make a living out of the chain. A fair one, there can be some differences of opinion there, but the point is we all need to make money, and that counts for the grower, and it means that the consumer at the end also wants a decent deal. That means that she or he can eat healthy and good product at an affordable, sustainable price.
So thanks, Dion, for that. That leads us a little bit in the discussion of the scorecard. So if we all want to do, and we all know that if we do each of us a good job, it will contribute to the end result. But still, we need to make selections of partners who we work with. You can't marry with everyone, right? You can maybe marry with a few. Well, in this concept, at least. But it drives us to a situation where we also want to evaluate people, publicly on what specialization they have and what contribution they do on getting a better product from the grower to the end receiver. So at Sobeys, you do have some ideas on how you can contribute to that objective.
Yeah.
So maybe Jeff, you can elaborate on that.
I will. Thanks, Steve. And when we were talking last week about that, did share something, and if everyone bears with me, give a little background and connect the dots after. As buyers of fresh produce, there can be perceptions out there, and there can be, not a lot of fact, but hey, this is the best, or this supplier partner is the best. So we worked on a scorecard for that, and of course, quality, volume, costing, those metrics are absolute no matter what. As we started to develop that with our team as the buyers themselves, throughout our entire supply chain within Sobeys, you start to see potentially kinks in the armor, where we'll say, one of my managers could say, hey, this supplier is the best. They've given the best programs, best costing, great quality, end consumer is happy. Then our inbound logistics team or our buyers who are actually working on the day-to-day POs and those fill rates are putting up their hands. No, they're not. No, they're not. Our trucks are waiting, waiting to pick up for hours at a time, and then they're late, and we're missing the store orders there, or we're getting prorated on those day-to-days, and it's not what that program was to be. So we brought all our teams together, because the biggest thing that started internally with ourselves is that collaboration, but through accountability. And let's all, talk this through. We brought in all those peer teams of the buyers, the quality control, the inbound logistics team, and measured where those suppliers are. And where we came out with that is basically three tiers with our supplier partners. It could be something potentially we can look at in the future through the entire supply chain. One, we have our transactional suppliers. I think that's straightforward enough, cost and volume. We might be there with you today, we'll take, but we're not in that end game vision where we are next year, where we are in 5 years. Second was our preferred suppliers. That's probably the largest part of our supplier pool today with our grower partners. We're there, we want that relationship, we want that collaboration, and we'll work together on those programs. And then third, very small percentage, is probably no less than or no more than 15% of our supplier pool is strategic partners themselves. And these are the supplier partners we want to nurture together, drive that innovation, talk total industry, travel the globe together as the seasons change, and work on that journey together. And that is the partners where we've brought the entire supply chain together. If there's a challenge with making it to the port on time or those challenges, we want to be there with them together. Because the more we talk about it, the more we hold each other accountable for it, and that's how we can solve it. It's not perfect. It can be work at first, but those grower partners we brought along on that journey, we see those benefits, and we see that increase together, and we see the end customer more happy and more fruit and vegetables on the shelf at all times for them to have.
So just by implementing this system, you've seen actually improvements.
Yep.
Did you make them very tangible? Did you have targets when you started rolling out this program?
We've held them. There's obviously firm metrics, fill rates, quality, rejections, volumes. Obviously, we can measure cost of goods for certain things, but there is subjective pieces to this too, which that's where it's actual survey. So we'll bring in our inbound logistics team, because day to day, we're not speaking with them. We might hear once in a while if we start shorting our stores, oh, this truck was late, but it could have been happening chronically and we just weren't aware. So we'll put out that survey. We target twice a year. It's something we're still evolving as we go, because it's a lot of information to download after, and we start, again, like I said, our strategic partners, because my team may feel, hey, this partner is up here, they're on that journey, but if everything else isn't working through that supply chain, it's all for nothing, right? And we're just going to repeat, repeat, repeat. This holds everyone fact-based. So there is those elements of it, and you know how you feel, and even the other teams throughout the supply chain, they'll say, what's the communication like on their side? Because ultimately, our team's deciding who those grower partners are, but again, if they're not hearing all that information, we might not be optimizing what that category performance could be.
Do you have plans to expand that to, let's say, some of the subcontracted stakeholders here? Because you know the way you bring it now is that for example, you do business with Dion, with the shippers. You know, you have that conversation with the shipper. You both want to be having a strategic relationship. You put the KPI sits in the scorecards on that. But then there's a bunch of, you know, companies like Goravs, the ports. There's a lot of other people that are actually having an impact on, you know, that end result. So what's your vision on that? And that helps us maybe to bridge it to Javier.
Yeah, and that's a great one, Steve. 'Cause it's something even with my team here this week. That's a conversation we're starting to have more. Is, you know, not just the fruit or the vegetables that are growing in the program we're working on, or, you know, just where our relationship is from a post-mortem and how can we work on in the future, but how is it through the entire supply chain, the freight forwarders. And I'll be honest, that's where we're hearing a lot of noise this year, and we've known it the last few years. Not our expertise, but we need to listen to our grower partners, not just for them, because I think the old relationship might have been us telling them, hey, we want this, do this, okay? Now we want to work together with them. Oh, if something's wrong with a certain port option or trucking or any of the above, how do we do this together and how can we pivot? We know we need to stay diversified. I'll say this first and foremost, being in Canada, you know, Mother Nature, but also what we've seen, especially with you know, Canada and the United States. I know it's globally, but we have a special interest. We share a large border with them, and our end customer isn't happy. We put USA product on the shelves. They don't want it. They're not buying it if there's a like item within reason. So we need to make sure we're diversified across the globe. And that's where we need to work through it with everyone. It's not just about over the truck. It's not just about the ocean. There's air freight. And how can we all do it together? And like I said in the beginning, it's that collaboration, but the collaboration is holding everyone accountable and need to be transparent, right? Have those tough conversations, something not working, what can we all do together to bring it forward together?
So there's a hook here, collaboration. And I wanna pause on that word, because that's something that drives us potentially into joint accountability, collaborating together in order to make sure that everyone is at the same page. Now, of course, also a company like Sobeys brings in product internationally. Well, it was proven here, not through the port of Algeciras that they're receiving it, obviously, but imagine it could be the port of Montreal. A port, obviously, is probably today not really being taken in consideration in these scorecards because it's another silo, it's another segment of the business. And I do know from the work that we do with the ports ourselves that a lot of the ports have, let's say, a self-assessment, self-evaluation continuously on how they do in the fresh produce. Most likely, how do they compare with some of the other ports, you know, in the European Union, and not necessarily with others. But how do you perceive that? How do you see yourself bridging into, you know, the collaborative, let's say, accountability and scorecarding?
Well, to be honest, we are from the old school. I mean, communications, arrange meetings to organize every single campaign. In the case of Algeciras, we are importing 55% of the fresh product importing in the Spanish port system, which is a huge volume. So we wouldn't be able to coordinate such amount of cargo without to coordinate the program like with South Africa. This is the case. The west coast of South America for every single campaign. However, saying that, I think it's more valuable. You need to be honest, of course, with your partners. That's quite important. You need to have that faith that everyone is working in the same way. But our experience is that the voyage to the digitalization is getting more transparency to the operations, and it's making their life easier. So in the past, we were all in the same business. In the past, you can, the shipper can blame on the shipping line can blame on the port authority, phytosanitary expense. So there are many players to blame. But nowadays, with the transparency, if you have control of the container when you get to the container terminal and then goes to the border inspection point, you have the data. It's more difficult for all of us to identify or to make an excuse about what was wrong. So communication is fine, it's needed, collaboration is a must, but digitalization is the final solution.
Yeah, we're definitely going to come to that. So do you currently right now at the port keep internal KPIs on, for example, how fast from birth to market, lead to market, let's call it like that? Do you keep track of that yourself internally?
Yeah, actually, we have too much data.
Okay.
We have too much data to deal with. But we, of course, in every single case, if we see that one container has been stay in the port for 10 days, for example, we go to the container, we have a tracking of the container through the container terminal, border inspection point, storage facilities, who's the tracking, handling. So we got the data. This is not just with the aim to blame or to say, well, this is your fault. It's just data, it's a tool to improve. Because the port authority, the bottom line is that the port authority, everyone is looking to the port authority, and if something goes wrong in Algeciras, it doesn't really matter. Is it the container terminal, the tracker? The name for Algeciras is the reputation that goes down.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. So and it's quite easy to. We've been working quite hard in several campaigns for so many years, and then you fail. You fail. You are the worst port authority ever. So we need to change the whole campaign. So now I think that is the past.
Yeah.
Now we have to trust on the data and to put all the information on the table and to be honest, of course.
Yeah, so that data share, of course, is one of the important topics also we'll get back to later. But before that, I would like to turn to Gaurav. As a company, you do business with the Sobeys in your area, and you deal with a lot of Indian shippers that are exporting produce to some of these markets. Have you ever been asked or on the receiving end or the shipper end, to let's say start thinking more about accountability and scorecards? Has that ever already happened in your market?
Honestly, I think from an Indian perspective, we call our supply chain like a team sport. Okay, it's like playing cricket. You need everybody. You need the ports, you need the growers, the suppliers, the shippers, shipping lines, forwarders, everybody. But at the end of it, what would we all want? I mean, this coalition is also trying to achieve, we grow together, we move together, we win together. But it all boils down to, if I have to play devil's advocate and be a little critical, about it, it will all boil down to price. So are we all willing to pay price for achieving all this? And that, I think, is always going to be the question that everybody or somebody in that chain is going to be concerned about, which to me always feels like while we're all aligned to the greater goal of winning together, but I still feel, we need to solve for price first, because everything else in terms of collaboration, data we spoke about a traditional approach versus the new age approach. It all boils down to winning together, because none of us, we say that, we love wasting good quality fruit. But the fact is that it all comes for a cost. Is the end supplier or buyer really willing to pay that much extra? And if yes, then all this solves it.
Well, I think it's a very honest, observation that, of course, is also taking place from the work with the supply chain of the future, and I'll get back to that a little bit later. We did indeed identify that cost is a very important topic because whatever projects, whether it's like voluntary collaboration, scorecarding, data sharing, people are asking, what's the return on my investment of doing that, of the time that I spend it, etc. Now, we hear from a lot of people in our supply chain council and in the work that we do with our movement, and a lot of them dared to challenge and say, there are so many inefficiencies today that have an indirect cost. And we're so focused on the direct cost, right? Which ultimately builds up to, you know, what the consumer is pricing for, that we still have a lot of room for improving there, and maybe not having a too big of a hard, you know, cost increase for the consumer to buy the product by, you know, making a lot more internal improvements on efficiencies. And I'd like to, you know, touch on that a little bit before we move into the data sharing. So, Jeff, you're nodding, so I think you kind of feel for it.
Yes. I agree with that. And you're right about cost. Cost is important. But I was actually going to bring that up, and no, we didn't prep for that. Inefficiencies in cost. Inefficiencies throughout the supply chain. It's amazing that 4% here, 1% there, 0.5%, and it can add up very quickly for us. And just speak, you know, Canada on a map, we're a very large country. I mean, we are the second largest country in the world. We're not the biggest population, though. We are very sporadic with our population pockets, which makes logistics in Canada a big challenge. We just can't, you know, go from city to city running our trucks. They can take 2-3 days until our next depot throughout the country and the provinces. Saying that is, you know, developing. I think if we rewind a few years ago, we weren't fully utilizing our cross-dock abilities within our own depot warehouses and our own fleet. Once we started to visit that, and the work there, it drove inefficiency costs and for ourselves, because we had trucks that were doing our store deliveries, coming back to the depots empty, right? Then we're like, well, wait, if we can run this truck here and then put, you know, our own product that we've had come in from our supplier partners, and then run it out, and then pick it up halfway through because those other trucks were coming back empty. Now they're picking it up and coming back to our depots with that finished goods. You know, it drives a little more cost out. Also doing that, has allowed us also to be quicker with our dating on stuff. So there's soft savings, a hard one to measure and it takes time, but then there's soft savings potentially on your retail shrink. So retail shrink is simple, you know, we're putting fresh product out for the stores. If the customers aren't picking it up quick enough, we're discarding it, right? Or donating it, but you know, we're losing margin dollars there. And that's some of the things, and it was a light bulb moment for us on some of our some of those runs and strategies we did that, hey, we got to continue that. And it's something now our team kind of every time we're discussing, even here, you know, throughout the programs, and obviously a lot over here, we're running ocean across the Atlantic or the Pacific, is how do we drive those inefficiency costs out? And it's amazing what you can find, because I think it's just, we're all status quo sometimes. This is the way it was, this is the way it's done. We need to challenge ourselves for that.
Yeah, so what's the question? Do we miss visibility on it? Just open question to the floor. Do we miss visibility on where we got cost inefficiencies?
I'm sorry, then you can go. Yeah, I think so as the retailer, because we're not, like myself, my team, we're the buyers, we're working with the growers. That we have I don't want to say we have the best visibility, but obviously the closest and our end consumer, but throughout the entire supply chain, there's so many pieces and so many people touching it. No, we don't see it all. So I think that's where I say, you know, if somehow bring everyone together at the table collaboratively, it needs to happen, because it is silo business.
Again, collaboration here, and probably sharing information amongst each other that we don't feel, let's say, uneasy with, in order to share it for the common goal. Maybe Dion, you also wanted to give your thoughts.
I'm like smiling. So I've got a colleague not too far from where Jeff operates, which said, if you give the product if you give the market or the consumer the wrong product, wrong time, wrong spec, it will punish you without any sentiment. You'll get exactly what you earn. And as long as there is not institutionalized, call it monopolies or overpowerful entities within the free market, the most efficient ones survive. So the wonderful thing is that if Jeff doesn't do all of these things and plus, someone else will take his place. And the same with Javier. Great guy, fantastic guy. We drink a lot of wine together, but isn't his job well? I can't use them. Same thing, if South Africa can't compete, we can't, we're out of it. So all of us are absolutely, and that's why I really believe in the free market. Unfortunately, you have a lot of meddling in the free market, especially on the food security side, in most countries where the governments interfere because they, under the banner of food security or whatever, they'll come around and they'll really distort the one. But I think that because the fruit, and I think vegetables part of that, is so vulnerable to quality and waste that we don't have a lot of time to make mistakes or fix it. And I think if I remember, just to give you a lovely story, that I grew up in South Africa in the 60s, and we used to send Granny Smith's apples to the UK, which we put into a wooden box and we nailed shut. And if you open them after 3 weeks, they looked like they carried a band of decay over there. But they ate them. That was all that was there in winter. It was fantastic. You wouldn't throw the things to the dogs in South Africa now. I think the only part which I would sympathize with Jim on my right hand side is that I think consumers are terrible. I mean, they are unbelievably finicky. And they think it's a ball bearing factory. They all roll out exactly like that, same size, bright color. It's not like that. We sit with a biological product, but we behave as if these things are manufactured in a factory, and it's not. But I mean, it's a fantastic challenge for all of us. I think it's great. It drives inefficiency out with the speed of, I mean, I know that in the production side, and if you look at the production side in South Africa over the last 3 years, we've taken something like 11 rand a carton out of the cost chain just by being a little bit smarter. But the point is that's not smart. It was actually survival.
Yeah, absolutely. So you touched a little bit also on the work you do with the port indirectly, because you don't contract directly with the port, right, Dion? I mean, these are other people down the chain. There's probably a lot of intermediaries before you reach actually to the port. So it's more about community being together, and I want to touch base on how we then move to the next level, the idea of the charter that we stepped in before. But ports know very well that there are more communities than they are, companies themselves that are, scored individually. It's very hard to take that one role in. So what role do you think a port can have in, let's say, a collaborative model in getting another 2 rands out of that carton in order to make sure that ultimately the consumer is going to get a better product at a potentially better price?
Well,
You're allowed to go on holiday in August.
I think works. I think that currently the port authorities, they are assuming huge amount of responsibility of the whole value chain, but we normally focus on the end of the value chain, but never focus on the end-to-end. That is something that, in our case, being honest, that we need to change that mind. I mean, I've been visiting so many ports in Latin America, and we need to collaborate with them to provide some know-how in order to make the whole chain, the whole cold chain, to be more efficient. You mentioned before cost. We see inefficiencies. So
yeah, one of the examples is we touched it in our prep call, the digitization of, for example, phytosanitary certification. It might be a small one, but it's all, like we say, bits and bytes here that actually contribute to this efficiency. So can you give an example? You had a recent example where the port took the lead in creating a partnership that facilitated that. Maybe you can, for the audience, give an example of that.
yeah, we came 2 weeks ago from Costa Rica, where is the European Union embassy for Central America. So we propose a project for CIECA, which is basically a body like the European Union over there, to push the trade from Central America to Europe, North America. So we propose to them to join our PCS, or our port community system, with their port community system, with the final goal to get the phytosanitary certificate even in advance where the ship is leaving Moine from Costa Rica. So that is very helpful, because it gives us, our operators, more time to get ready for the local operations. And that is money. Yeah. That's a lot of money. You can save a lot of money if you have how many containers, if you see that you can revise every single document that comes from the previous port, and that is the translation is saving money and saving time. So in our idea, as you can see, digitalization and transparency is the base for our future success. And this is a project that is going to be presented in Brussels in the middle of October under the strategy of Global Gateway Forum. And this is it's going to be basically assumed by the Port Authority of Algeciras, but our idea is to be transponded to the whole European ports, because it's work for Algeciras, it may work for the rest of the port. Spanish port and port from the north of Europe. But it's basically the only way to improve in terms of efficiency.
Okay, that's a great example. You know, in India itself, do you already see examples of where digitization is taking place?
Yeah, honestly, I think technology, transparency, visibility, collaboration, we've been hearing that all along. India's, there's a lot to do on that front, and I think we were very efficiently inefficient, and I think by bringing in all such, opportunities that we have, which will improve supply chain, and the verdict is right from the Prime Minister who's running the mandate, and one of the biggest spends after defense is ports and logistics. So we definitely have that going for us. But on the technology front, we are investing with Japanese firms, who are bringing about visibility on the domestic side, which kind of support the EXIM. On the port side, we're kind of, getting right to the shippers, BCOs, growers, trying to see how we can support them. So, cutting down efficiencies, eventually cutting down cost. And India is a very price-sensitive market. So for us, cost is first.
It's also survival, like
and
Dion
it is
said.
like,
Yeah.
he said, yes, it's about survival, because, we would want to be part of the global fresh produce, and for that we have a long way to go, and such opportunities and projects that we are running certainly will take us there.
Thanks for that. So it's very clear. Everybody is willing to share. We're all on the same page. Everybody wants to help and contribute in whatever capacity they have, and how the lines are currently happening. And thanks to the coalition work, we at least have the conversation and are sitting in one room, making sure we discuss. Maybe a short introduction on the supply chain of the future work that we have in the International Fresh Produce Association, which goes a little bit downstream on that topic, where we discuss how are we going to collaborate, how are we going to share data, how are we going to create systems that are more fair for everyone, how can we create potentially scorecards, potentially not, I don't know, that's the work of all the work committees. There's over 500 people now from over 30 countries involved in this. How do we create a system with that? And I think, and I like that from the last conversation, Dion, because it aligns very well with what we said at the supply chain of the future people that are involved, is we need to first get to a statement, a declaration, a charter where we say, okay, we are going to do this. And I think because of all the fragmentation we have in our market space, the work of the coalition tries to bring all of these, together, and to get in a situation, how do we get to a point where we start with that first phase before we start digging into practicalities? So the charter idea, can you elaborate on that?
Yes, yes, with pleasure. So our idea is that it's interesting that when you deal with logistics, you have size in shipping lines, which are quite, as they became more and more efficient buying out, so they became bigger and bigger organizations. You are not allowed by law to jointly contract, really, so the shippers became small entities in that one. So how do I get the corporation to firstly that it's a fair game, there's sustainability, there's acknowledgement of how do we derive at profit, because all of those things are important. And the idea was that let's set up, we as, call it the partakers in this chain, what do we see as call it sustainable, ethical, good, world-class practices that we would like to say these are things we'd like to do. And principally, if we have agreement within any, or in this case, the Southern Hemisphere Fruit Alliance, what would be the things that we agree for as growers and shippers and receivers in whatever countries to markets, what would there be those activities? And once we get there on a voluntary basis, you say, okay, guys, this is what we've got. Who of you who derive services like the Port of Algeciras or, let's say, a shipping line would agree that those, when on a willingly basis, is actually some of the targets which would definitely improve the entire process of supplying the market with quality product, be it driving out inefficiencies. Secondly, is it limiting fruit waste? Thirdly, allows for called not overbearing power misuse and those things. And let's try and build together, because it's always you made a point in the beginning which is extremely important. It's all about relationships. Even the old school, it's all about relationships and how you use relationships to find solutions. So I think something that we'll be working on at the moment is a fantastic tool which puts up there where we principally say we underwrite that. And if you agree that what we're asking is fair and equitable and sustainable and in line with your value system, say so or underwrite it. And we would definitely put you up and say, this is a service provider which principally underwrites the value systems that we want. And I think that's a great way to start. We can start, very limited, but over time you can make it more and more challenging and more efficient and more effective. And I think that is what we're trying to drive at here.
I think indeed, what I've heard today and what I've heard in other sessions, it's a great way to start. So just make sure that everyone is aligned and says, I can underwrite these values. We know why we're doing it. We know why we have the conversation, and then potentially move, down the line more into, let's say, small, like you say, challenging small systems where you score. Would you, as a port, well, you haven't seen the charter yet, I guess. Maybe there's something in there you wouldn't underwrite, but. So, but do you think like Port of Algeciras would feel comfortable underwriting a charter like that and see it as a springboard to, let's say, further work?
Well, we are always willing to get arranged agreements with certain markets. And for us, for example, for South Africa, we know, I've been in South Africa witnessing how efficient they're working. And when we get that feedback, we can go forward to get an agreement by writing or to get even an agreement through the government of Spain with the government of South Africa. That's true that we have from time to time some misunderstanding regarding the phytosanitary issues that we are, as a port authority, I think most of the time we are more on the South Africa side, pushing for the trade. But yeah, solo school is at the bottom line. We are persons. You can do whatever you want to propose, writing, but the bottom line is that every single one we need to do the homework and to be honest, proactive, and loyal to your client.
Okay, thank you. So, Koraf, would you underwrite a voluntary statement like that? But not only underwriting it, of course, you also need to live with it.
See, you called us the connectors, right? So,
Yes.
in Hindi we say, Mia Bivi Razi, kya karega kazi. It actually translates to, if the husband and wife are ready, the priest is just going to observe and give his blessing. So if everybody in the chain's okay, I'll connect and I'll sign as well.
Okay, that's great. So, what does it take a retailer, and I think it would be right to say that you can be seen as a decent retailer. What would it take for Sobeys also to
Sorry, Steve? Yeah.
to underwrite a charter like that?
Oh.
So, do you see a challenge with that? Do you see a pitfall as a retailer also to be a part of a movement where when we underwrite a charter?
No, in principle, no. And I think for us as a retailer, as I said, we're paid to be experts with our end customer, and fruits and vegetables, that's what we're all after, and then with our growers. So in principle, yes. I think, again, like it's how, connecting the dots throughout that entire supply chain and everyone here. Javier mentioned something earlier when you were talking about, scorecard and potentials, and what was it? You said there's too much data, and there's too much to go through, and we went through similar. So when I was speaking of what we did a couple years ago, we tried to bring on, hey, all of our suppliers. Let's see how they all rank. It was overwhelming. And it's still overwhelming today as we just work, like I said, our strategic partners that we grow those category innovations with. They're not exclusive in a category, but they're the ones driving the growth. You know, we have metrics for that, but it's a lot. So it might be, hey, how do we get that sampling? How do we get that core in each piece of that supply chain that everyone can trust, put forward, and bring that together? I think that might be, because we could just be spinning forever and ever on it. But yes, to answer your question, of course, in principle,
Well, Sobeys
it
is
can
a
be
part
overwhelming.
of it. Yeah, it is overwhelming. It's a lot of information because in each of those silos and segments, we have a lot of own systems and data to share. And unfortunately, a lot of that information is absolutely unaligned with all the other silos. And that's why I think, besides of the concept of we are agreeing all first under a charter and declaration, we think one of the most important next steps is to get to harmonize standards in data to have an understanding about the same, because it's going to be very hard to, let's say, evaluate the impact of your performance on a product if we don't agree what the product is, or if we don't agree how to measure that. So that's the second thing that we're doing, in supply chain of the future. And then the third one is, and I invite people to go to the supplychainofthefuture.org website, and also we'll make it available after this session. The other thing is that we think is important, that we need to find a way to be comfortable sharing some data, let's say minimum viable data that we think in order to continue the work of all what we're doing here. And I think that if you already started with a charter and you say, okay, I jump, I'll do it, you're probably also going to be a lot more comfortable with starting to share some of that data with like-minded, because it's going to contribute to to the end goal. Maybe a little time, if you allow me, guys, to ask whether someone in the audience has a question on what we've been discussing today, and I'm going to ask Ron to kindly. Does anyone have a question?
I will ask a question. So, how do you see linking a complex supply chain together to come to a solution like a charter?
Look, I think it'll be totally naive to think that anybody would sign up to a charter if there isn't some value for him or his organization as well. So if we write up a charter which says all the nice things for growers and exporters, but it exposes shipping lines and buyers, it won't go anywhere. So we have to meet ourselves at the market in such a way that by doing something we are driving at some goals. Well, let's say, first start with your point about value systems. So if we agree that this is the product, if we agree this is what we want to sell, and we say, okay, so if we want to sell this, and this is our value system and our beliefs, this is what we think we can do jointly. If we agree on certain practices, we would classify, say, as world-class or virtually world-class. But I mean, the signature at the end would be, let me just make an example. MSC have got probably 1,000 lawyers. I mean, to try and write up something that they will have to adhere to, it's just wasting our time. But if I have a charter which MSC perceives, if they don't sign up to it, they're going to lose sufficient business, they will sign up. So it's the same with Jeff, it's the same with all of us. So if we sign up to that thing, it's because we think that the joint charter has got real value in deriving better, more efficient, more effective business, and bottom line at the end of, for everyone, from start to finish. And then anybody will sign. But I mean, to think that you're going to write something up that has value for me or Jeff, not going to happen.
Would we dare to go as far as saying, okay, this is maybe a very direct question, that Sobeys says at a certain point of time, I'm not going to take product in if there's going to be people involved that do not underwrite, those specific values. You do that in many other things, in sourcing produce, right? GRASP, social responsibility.
Yep.
Do you see a pathway to that, saying that, okay, if you want to supply us, you need to work with, let's say, other suppliers or other people in the supply chain that underwrite those values?
Potentially, yes. it comes back to, I think, is everyone else there with us. And I'll say, my friendly competitors, the other supermarket chains within Canada. And I think that's where we would all need to come together on that. And again, maybe, again, it's through the whole supply chain. And as Dion said, it can't just be everyone else benefits and then end consumer, which also, retailer, that we're just passing on costs, because cost is important. It's not the only factor. I think it's similar, and I'm not going to get too much into it. I know Ron's standing right there and knows it better than us. In Canada, like, we just recently went through a grocery code of conduct to hold all of ourselves together. It's taken a couple of years, 3 years, 4 years, for all the retailers to align on it. Because at first it seems like, oh, we're putting ourselves at a disadvantage, or the suppliers thought, oh, I'm at an advantageous position, now I can just, but no, once everyone kind of sat at the table over again, you realize that it is beneficial for everyone along on that journey. But it takes time, and it takes everyone to get there and say, hey, we want that end game. Like you said, in principle, do we sign the charter? Making sure everyone's together.
Now, maybe a moonshot, but would we dare to push it to the where we say we want to push out anyone that only extracts value out of the supply chain, but we want to incentivize the people that add value? Maybe, Gaurav, you want to add to that?
I think the last 10, 15 years is all about data. Then it became about structuring data into silos and stuff like that. Then it came about diversification. Now we are talking about too much data. Then we talk about too much technology. To the extent we're saying it may, have people lose their jobs. Then diversification, and it's getting fragmented. So it needs to start somewhere. So I think I would completely agree that this is probably a good start point, and we should all align to it. And as we move along, we keep, moving, modifying, so that everybody comes close to the median, and then I guess we'll have something to move forward with.
But the medium is a next step, right? We're heading in the right direction. Javier, what's your take on that? I mean, going as far, how far can we push it? Do we believe, in the longer term, that we could build something that allows us to, let's say, incentivize the people that add value, but really push out people that only extract value from the supply chain?
Well, in our case, we are always looking for collaborations. So we are quite pleased that the Global Coalition is inviting us. I think even this event is a way to spread out how we can, in the future, in the present, to get harmonized certain procedures or concerns of the industry. In our case, to be a public entity, we do MOUs with different governments or organizations, it works without the economical implications, which I think is not a problem at all. We can get an agreement with South Africa in terms of operational activity, sharing data, but we have to avoid the economical impact. But so it's okay for us. I mean, it works.
Okay.
It definitely works.
Well, that's great. Well, I'm going to ask Ron to wrap it up, if Ron is listening. I'm going to ask you to wrap it up, but first, of course, I want to thank the panelists. It's great to have all your insights, and it's also fantastic to see representation from literally everywhere in the world, sharing the same values and the ideas. So let's get to work and go for the next step. Thanks all of you.
Thank you, Steve. And so this panel and hearing the thoughts and strategic vision of where supply chains can go. Surely, the group here, it's exciting, and I don't know how much you realize where the potential can be. And what we're seeing now, when I'm hearing the discussions, and I was making some quick notes. So the ongoing discussion on collaboration, transparency, visibility, and how does that all drive prosperity? The prosperity discussion is fundamental to everybody here and to the consumer in the end, because I always say we're the only industry that can sell more product, people become healthier, we make money. It's a win-win for everybody. We're on the side of angels at the end of the day. How do we enable that? And a big part of that comes back to addressing the complexity. And we started to hear some of the complexity and connecting it together. And I want to come back to the foundational elements of how do we move to the supply chain of the future framework, bringing everyone who are at different stages in operations and development, and the foundation of a charter, starting with marine, but going beyond that. And in Canada, just to give everyone some background, we actually
Como el mundo. Escuchan Sintra y Negro Online.